You know what real devastation sounds like? It's not screaming or shouting, it's the sound of your daughter's voice cracking over a phone line on a Tuesday afternoon, trying to hold it together while her world falls apart. That was Rebecca 3 weeks ago. They didn't even let me pack my own desk, Dad, she choked out. 4 years. I missed Christmas dinner for the Q4 launch. I worked weekends for 2 months straight on the servo integration. Victoria She walked me out like I was stealing office supplies. I'm Theodore Patterson, 48 years old, and I was sitting in my home office looking out at Manhattan, where I own a small but significant piece of the skyline. I didn't say much at first, just took a sip of my black coffee and felt that familiar cold calculation kick in. It's the same mindset that got me through the Navy and helped me short tech stocks before the dot-com crash. Call it the predator switch. Who made the call? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Victoria Walsh. The new VP of Operations, Rebecca said, and I could hear her wiping her nose. She said my role was redundant. Redundant, Dad. I built that department from nothing. I told her to meet me at the coffee shop across from her building. Before I even grabbed my coat, I was already pulling up public filings for Orion Link strategies on my laptop. Now, before I tell you how I took down a corporate bully without raising my voice, let me be clear about something. This isn't about revenge for revenge's sake. This is about justice. About what happens when incompetent people get power and use it to hurt good workers. Rebecca is brilliant. MIT engineering, patents in robotics, the kind of mind that builds things that matter. And some wannabe executive decided to throw that away. I met Rebecca 20 minutes later. She looked terrible. Red eyes, mascara streaked down her cheeks, holding a sad cardboard box with a plant, a photo, and a coffee mug I'd given her when she got the job. They wouldn't even let me back up my files, she said. Victoria stood there checking her phone while security watched me pack. Let's go back, I said. You forgot something in your desk. Dad, I can't. They'll call security. I want to see this, Victoria, I said, and something in my tone made Rebecca look up. We walked back into the lobby of Orion Link, modern corporate space, all glass and steel, cold as a morgue. I was dressed down. Jeans, sweater that cost more than most people's car payments, but looked like something from Target, boat shoes. To anyone watching, I was just a supportive father. That's when she walked out. Victoria Walsh. Picture everything wrong with modern corporate culture in a $3,000 suit. She was laughing loudly at something she'd said to a terrified-looking intern, strutting through the lobby like she owned the place. Excuse me, Ms. Walsh, Rebecca said, her voice trembling. I think I left my... Victoria didn't even slow down, just waved her hand without looking. HR handles lost property. Rebecca, you don't work here anymore. Clear the lobby. You're cluttering the aesthetic. I watched her go, watched how the security guard looked embarrassed for us, watched my daughter shrink like she was trying to disappear, and I looked around that lobby, really looked. Fraying carpet, cracked reception desk, employees walking with their heads down. This wasn't a thriving company. This was a corpse with good lighting. She's awful, Rebecca whispered. She's sloppy, I corrected, pulling out my phone. I wasn't checking social media. I was checking Orion Link's stock performance. It was ugly. 3 consecutive quarters of missed earnings. The board was desperate, and they'd brought in people like Victoria to cut costs. But they were cutting muscle and leaving cancer. I took a picture of the company directory, focused on the board members and major investors. Then I looked up at where Victoria had disappeared. You know what? I said to Rebecca, wrapping an arm around her. I've been looking for a new project. My portfolio needs some hands-on management. What are you talking about? Restructuring, I said, smiling at Eddie, the tired-looking security guard. Rough day? I asked him. You have no idea, Eddie muttered. Since the new management took over, it's been chaos. They fired half the cleaning crew, cut everyone's hours. Interesting. Tell me, Eddie, does Orion Link own this building? Yeah? But I heard they're trying to sell and lease back. Cash problems. Bingo. A sale-leaseback meant they were drowning. When a company is drowning, that's when smart money moves in. My Navy training taught me that the best time to strike is when your enemy is already taking on water. Come on, Rebecca, I said. Let's get coffee. I have some calls to make. You're going to do something crazy, aren't you? Nothing crazy, I said. I'm a silent investor. I'm going to be very, very quiet. As we walked out, I was already running calculations. Orion Link was bleeding cash, management was incompetent, and the board was panicking. In my experience, that's when you can buy a dollar for 50 cents. The trick is knowing which 50 cents to spend. The thing about hostile takeovers is they're nothing like the movies. No dramatic music, no shouting on trading floors. Real corporate warfare is boring. It's paperwork, patience, and precision. It's what they taught us in the Navy about warfare. Slow, methodical, overwhelming force applied at exactly the right moment. I spent that evening in my home office, mapping out Orion Link's financial structure like I was planning a military operation. I spent the next 2 weeks turning my home office into a command center. Rebecca stayed with me, partly because she couldn't bear her empty apartment, but mostly because I needed her knowledge of where the bodies were buried at Orion Link. Having an inside source is like having reconnaissance before a mission. You don't go into hostile territory blind. "Who's the weak link on the board?" I asked, pointing at my whiteboard covered in names and percentages. I'd mapped out the entire ownership structure like a target assessment. Rebecca studied the list while nursing her third cup of coffee. Pete Johnson, the CFO, going through a messy divorce. He's been liquidating everything to pay lawyers. Perfect. Desperation makes people sloppy with money. I didn't approach Johnson directly. That's amateur hour. When a woman in a Chanel suit walks up to a desperate CFO, stock prices double overnight. Instead, I used Blue Harbor Holdings, a shell company I'd set up 3 years ago for exactly this kind of situation. My proxy contacted Johnson's broker with an offer. 5% premium on his shares, cash, off-market transaction. No questions, no publicity, money in his account within 24 hours. He bit so hard I could hear the snap from Connecticut. Just like that, I owned 8% of Orion Link. But 8% gets you a quarterly report and a polite thank you note. I needed real influence. The magic number for serious corporate control is around 47%, enough to block major decisions and force board changes. Going for 51% outright would trigger too many regulatory flags and drive up the price. I started buying the float, shares trading publicly on the market, but carefully. Volume spikes draw attention like blood draws sharks. The Navy taught me about patience. You don't attack until conditions are perfect. So I used what we call iceberging in the business. Thousands of small buy orders through 12 different brokerage accounts, each one small enough to fly under the radar. Different times, different amounts, all flowing back to 3 separate trusts I controlled. Like running a covert operation. Multiple entry points, coordinated timing, single objective. Piece by piece, hour by hour, I was buying Orion Link while everyone else was selling their panic. Meanwhile, I needed intelligence from inside the building. That's where Andrew Miller came in. Kid from Queens, 22 years old, sharp as a blade, saving money for college. He'd been running documents for me for years through various courier services. The thing about Andrew is he's invisible. To corporate executives, he's just furniture that moves. "I need you to take a job," I told him, sliding an envelope across my desk. "What kind of job?" "Orion Link uses Metro Messenger service for their internal mail. I just acquired controlling interest in Metro Messenger this morning. You're now their dedicated runner for the executive floors." Andrew's eyes lit up. The kid understood strategy. "You want me to spy? I want you to listen. I want to know who's screaming at who, whose door stays closed, and I want photos of any whiteboard that says confidential or urgent. Think of it as reconnaissance. How long do I have? As long as it takes. But Andrew, be invisible. Don't ask questions. Don't volunteer information. Just move through that building like air." Andrew started the next Monday. Every evening, he'd come to my apartment with a report. The intelligence was better than I'd hoped. Victoria wasn't just incompetent. She was systematically destroying everything Rebecca had built. She fired the entire legacy engineering team Andrew told me over pizza at my kitchen island. Replaced them with her old sorority network and their boyfriends. Half of them don't even have relevant degrees. What about the product development? Delayed indefinitely. But here's the kicker. Victoria told the marketing team to keep selling the Q4 robotics release anyway. They're taking orders for products that don't exist. This was gold. They were selling vaporware. If the SEC got wind of this, the stock would crater to nothing. It also meant the current stock price was artificially inflated by outright lies. Victoria was essentially running a Ponzi scheme disguised as a tech company. I decided to accelerate my buying strategy. While I couldn't directly manipulate the market, I could certainly help the truth come to light. I had a contact at Financial Week write a speculative piece about tech companies overpromising on delivery schedules. Nothing libelous, just unfavorably framed questions about industry practices. Is the tech sector's vaporware problem getting worse? Ran the headline, with Orion Link mentioned as one of several companies facing delivery delays. The morning it published, Orion Link stock dropped 12%. The market hates uncertainty, and uncertainty was exactly what I was selling. Panic selling began immediately. Institutional investors started dumping shares like they were on fire. While everyone else was running for the exits, I was walking calmly through the door they'd left open. My stake jumped from 8% to 15% in a single morning, then 22% by close of trading, then 28% over the following week as more investors lost confidence. But I needed to be smart about the final push. Going from 28% to 47% in normal market conditions would take months and cost a fortune in inflated prices. I needed a catalyst, something to shake loose a large block of shares all at once. That's when I remembered Harold Foster. Foster was 82 years old, living in a nursing home in Connecticut. He was Orion Link's original founder, pushed out during a corporate restructuring 10 years ago. The beautiful thing about founders' stock is it often comes with special voting rights and restrictions. Foster held 17% of Orion Link in a special class of shares that could only be sold as a complete block. More importantly, Foster had been watching his life's work get destroyed by people like Victoria. Sometimes the best weapon isn't money or influence. Sometimes it's just giving a bitter old man the chance to settle a score. "Rebecca," I said, hanging up from a call with Foster's nursing home. "Pack a bag. We're taking a drive to Connecticut tomorrow." "Why?" "Because I need to have a conversation with your company's founder, and because some conversations are better had in person." The hook was set. Now I needed to reel it in. Connecticut. In November is bleak, all bare trees and gray skies. It matched my mood perfectly as Rebecca drove while I reviewed Harold Foster's file. The old man was 82, a brilliant engineer who'd started Orion Link in a garage in the 1980s. He'd been pushed out 10 years ago during what the board called strategic restructuring, but what was really just a power grab by younger executives who wanted his equity. The thing about founders' stock is it usually comes with special provisions. Foster's 17% wasn't just regular shares. They were Class A voting stock with transfer restrictions. He couldn't sell them in pieces, and any buyer had to be approved by the original board charter. But if he sold the entire block to a single entity, those restrictions disappeared. "He's going to hate us," Rebecca said, gripping the steering wheel. "He hates everyone associated with the current management." "Good," I said. "So do we." We found Foster at Sunset Manor, an upscale assisted living facility that smelled like lavender and old money. He was in the solarium playing chess against himself, looking frail but with sharp hawk eyes that missed nothing. "I don't want any more brochures," he barked without looking up. "And I don't want to buy a timeshare." "We're not selling anything, Mr. Foster," I said, sitting across from him. "We're buying." He looked up, studied me for a long moment, then shifted his gaze to Rebecca. His expression softened slightly. "I know you," he said to her. "You're the robotics girl, the one who fixed the servo latency issue in the Mark 9 prototype." Rebecca blinked, surprised. "You remember that?" "I remember everything about my company," Foster said bitterly. "Or what used to be my company before the vultures took over." I leaned forward. "They fired her, Mr. Foster. Victoria Walsh fired her so she could gut the robotics department and sell off the IP to pad her quarterly numbers." Foster's hand tightened on a chess piece. "Walsh. The one with the fake teeth and the MBA from nowhere. She's planning to sell your robotics division," I said, dropping the bomb. "The board called an emergency session for tomorrow afternoon. She's stripping the company for parts." Foster went very still. That robotics division wasn't just a product line to him. It was his vision made real. Everything else at Orion Link was just software wrapping around his core innovation. "And who are you?" Foster asked, turning those sharp eyes on me. "Another corporate raider?" "I'm an investor who believes in building things that last," I said carefully. "What Victoria's doing is wasteful. She's stripping copper wire out of a mansion and calling it efficiency." "If I sell to you," Foster said, his voice raspy with age, "what happens to the company?" "I fire Victoria Walsh," I said. "I reinstate Rebecca as head of robotics, and we get back to the business of engineering instead of financial engineering." Foster looked at Rebecca for a long moment. "Can you run it? The whole division?" "I was running it," Rebecca said, finding her voice, "before they cut my budget to buy new ergonomic chairs for the marketing department." Foster actually cackled. A dry, rusty sound. Damn marketing department. Always the chairs. He reached into his cardigan and pulled out an ancient flip phone. I'm calling my lawyer. Tell him to draft the transfer papers. The next 4 hours were a blur of frantic calls, document reviews, and wire transfers. Foster's lawyer was old school. Everything had to be perfect, every comma in place. But by sunset, the confirmation pinged on my phone. Harold Foster's 17% was mine. Combined with my existing holdings, I now owned 45% of Orion Link Strategies. Not quite the 47% I'd been aiming for, but close enough to cause serious problems for Victoria's plans. But I didn't have time to celebrate. My phone was buzzing with a call from Andrew. "Theodore, we have a major problem," he said, sounding panicked. Victoria moved up the emergency board meeting. It's not tomorrow afternoon, it's tonight at 8 p.m. She's doing a dinner closing with the buyers from Cyberdyne Industries. They're already in the building. I checked my watch. It was 6:30 p.m. and we were 2 hours away in Connecticut traffic. "Stall her," I commanded. "Whatever it takes." "How? I'm just the courier." "Andrew, listen to me. Do not let those papers get signed until I get there. If she closes that sale tonight, unwinding it will take years of litigation." I have an idea. Remember the master keycard you gave me for building access? Yes. I think I can create some technical difficulties. Give you time to get here. Do it. But be smart about it. Don't get yourself arrested. As Rebecca and I raced down I-95, Andrew was about to become a legend. According to his later report, the Cyberdyne buyers, 3 serious Germans in expensive suits, were being escorted to the executive elevator by Victoria. She was all shark smiles, already counting her bonus money. Andrew was waiting in the elevator with his mail cart. "Hold the door," Victoria barked as they approached. This was Andrew's moment. He looked Victoria dead in the eye. Weeks of being treated like invisible furniture crystallizing into perfect revenge. He saw her arrogance, her contempt for everyone she considered beneath her, and he let the elevator doors slide shut right in her face. Victoria was left standing in the lobby with 3 confused German executives, looking like a complete amateur. They had to wait for the next elevator, precious minutes ticking away. But Andrew wasn't done. Using the master keycard I'd provided, he locked out the 40th floor from the elevator system. When Victoria and the Germans finally got into the next car and pressed 40, nothing happened. The button stayed dark. "What the hell?" Victoria screamed, pounding the button. They had to take the stairs from the 39th floor, and Andrew, bless his devious heart, had accidentally spilled industrial floor cleaner in the stairwell earlier, creating a slip hazard that would make a personal injury lawyer weep with joy. We were still 45 minutes out when Andrew texted, "Target delayed, hostile environment created. You have a window." The kid had bought us time. Now I had to use it. I burst through the lobby doors of Orion Link at 7:50 p.m., leaving Rebecca to park the car. Eddie, the security guard, looked up from his desk, startled by my entrance. "Eddie," I said, not breaking stride. I slapped the wire transfer confirmation on his desk. Harold Foster's share transfer, all 17% of it. I now own 45% of the company that owns this building. Call the 40th floor. Tell them the largest shareholder is coming up. Eddie looked at the paper, looked at all those zeros, looked at me. A slow grin spread across his weathered face. "Elevator B is waiting for you, Mr. Patterson." I rode up in the same elevator Victoria had been locked out of just minutes before. The silence gave me time to think. In the Navy, we called this moment going over the beach, that final approach where everything either worked perfectly or went to hell. There's no middle ground. The doors opened on the 40th floor. I could hear voices from the boardroom, frustrated German accents mixed with Victoria's increasingly desperate sales pitch. "Unacceptable conditions," one of them was saying. "We are discussing a multi-million-dollar acquisition, not navigating an obstacle course." "Minor technical difficulties," Victoria was insisting. "Please, let me show you the IP portfolio. The price is extraordinarily favorable." I walked down the hallway, my footsteps muffled by expensive carpet. Andrew was standing by the water cooler, looking nervous but excited. He gave me the slightest nod. I stopped outside the glass doors of the boardroom and took a breath. Inside, Victoria was spreading documents across the mahogany table, while 3 German executives stood looking skeptical, still brushing industrial cleaner off their expensive shoes. "Just sign here," Victoria was saying, practically shoving a pen at them. "The robotics patents transfer immediately. This is the deal of the century." It really was a steal. She was selling them for about 30 cents on the dollar just to close quickly and secure her bonus. I pushed the doors open. They didn't slam dramatically, just swished with that expensive pneumatic hiss that quality conference rooms have. "I'm afraid that won't be necessary," I said clearly. Victoria whipped around. Her face cycled from confusion to recognition to pure rage as she placed me, the father, from the lobby 3 weeks ago. "Security!" she shouted. "This is a private meeting. Get him out!" She marched toward me, her finger pointed like a weapon. "I don't know how you got up here, but you're leaving now." I didn't move. "Touch me, Victoria, and you'll lose more than your job." "My job?" She laughed, but it came out shrill. "I run this company. You're nobody." "He's disrupting our meeting," she said to the Germans, who were watching this unfold like spectators at a tennis match. "Security is coming. No need for security," I said, walking past her to the head of the table. I placed my briefcase down and opened it with deliberate calm. Inside was a single folder containing Harold Foster's share transfer documents. "Gentlemen," I said, switching to the German I'd learned during 2 years stationed in Frankfurt, "Das Treffen ist beendet. Das Angebot ist zurückgezogen." The meeting is over. The offer is withdrawn. The lead German, a sharp-eyed man in his 60s, looked intrigued rather than annoyed. "And you are?" Victoria stormed up to the table. "He's a stalker. He's the father of a disgruntled ex-employee." "I am Theodore Patterson," I said calmly, "and as of 2 hours ago, I own 45% of Orion Link Strategies." The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria snatched the folder from the table, tearing through the pages. "This is fraud. Forgery. Foster is senile. He doesn't sell." "Not to people who call him senile," I corrected. "But he's quite happy to sell to people who respect his life's work." The German investor had put on reading glasses and was examining the documents over Victoria's shoulder. "The paperwork appears legitimate, Ms. Walsh. He holds significant minority control." "Minority!" Victoria clung to the word like a life preserver. "He can't block this sale. The board approved it." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "I can. Connecticut corporate law requires majority shareholder approval for asset sales exceeding 15% of company value. This sale represents about 25% of Orion Link's total worth." Victoria's face went white. That can't be right." "It's very right. I had my lawyers check while I was driving down from Connecticut." The elevator dinged in the hallway. Rebecca walked in, no longer looking like the defeated woman who'd been escorted out 3 weeks ago. She was wearing her old blazer and carrying herself like the engineer she was. "Did I miss the vote?" she asked. "Just in time," I said. "Motion to remove Victoria Walsh from all executive positions, effective immediately." "Seconded," Rebecca said. "All in favor?" "Aye." Motion carries. I looked at Victoria. "You're fired. You have 10 minutes to collect your personal items." The specific silence that follows a public execution settled over the room. Victoria stood there processing the complete destruction of her career. Her face went through rage, bargaining, and finally acceptance. "You'll hear from my lawyers," she muttered, grabbing her briefcase. "I look forward to it," I said. "They'll want to discuss the expense account irregularities my forensic accountants discovered. Those client dinners in Vegas are particularly interesting." Victoria went pale and walked out without another word. 2 months later, I was having dinner with Rebecca at her apartment, the same one she'd been too depressed to stay in after getting fired. The transformation was remarkable. Orion Link stock was up 28%, the robotics division was back on track, and Rebecca had just been promoted to Chief Technology Officer. "The German deal worked out better than we thought," she said, reviewing quarterly reports over dessert. "Licensing instead of selling means steady revenue for years." "Good," I said. "What about the team? Hired back everyone?" "Victoria fired, plus 10 new engineers. We're actually building things again instead of just selling promises." I raised my wine glass. "To building things that last. To family that has your back," Rebecca countered. 6 months after that dinner, I got a package from Connecticut. Inside was a white chess king and a note from Harold Foster. Game 1. I hadn't just saved a company. I'd restored my daughter's career, vindicated an old engineer, and proved that competence beats arrogance every time. The $8 million in unrealized gains didn't hurt either. These days, I'm semi-retired, serving as chairman of Orion Link while Rebecca runs operations. Sometimes I still get that predator switch feeling when I see corporate bullies in action. The game never really ends. But the best victories are the ones you share with family.